And welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and again, you might have the wrong card in your commander deck. Just covering some rules, interactions that people might not be aware of, or just cards that don't fit well with certain commanders. And I'm going to have to go back to the last wrong cards video I did because there's a rule interaction that a lot of people here might not be aware of. I talked about Mishra and Wishclaw Talisman in that last video, and I got so many comments on that video about this interaction not working at all because Wishclaw Talisman says remove a wish counter from Wishclaw Talisman, and people thinking that because you are renaming the copy as Mishra's Warform, that means you're not removing a counter from Mishra's Warform, so that doesn't work at all. It actually does work. Whenever you have a card referring to itself, that means essentially this card, right? When Wishclaw Talisman says remove a counter from Wishclaw Talisman, that means you're removing a counter from this card. Doesn't matter what the renamed version is. Whenever you're using any sort of copy or clone effect, if you're ever changing the name, all of that name changing will apply to all the abilities on the card, right? So Sakashima the Imposter is another example of this. You may have Sakashima the Imposter enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except its name is Sakashima the Imposter. So if your Sakashima the Imposter is copying a creature that is referencing itself and its own ability, it will still work with your Sakashima the Imposter. You're essentially just replacing the name of the card as well. So whenever a card refers to its own name in its abilities, if you change the name of that card, it will still work with everything. So that interaction does actually work there. Another comment I got about the same interaction was with Humble Defector and Feldon, and a whole lot of Feldon of the Third Path decks out there have Humble Defector in them. And again, this is the exact same interaction here and doesn't work. Your Feldon is going to create a token copy of your Humble Defector, right? Assuming it's in your graveyard, you're going to be able to tap it right away, of course, because it has haste. So you're going to get to draw the two cards, and then you have to donate it to an opponent. But again, we have that sacrifice at the beginning of the next end step trigger. So exact same scenario here. You will donate to your opponent and you cannot sacrifice it because you no longer control it on the end step. So it will not be going anywhere. Your opponent will be able to hang on to that token copy that you are creating. Again, it might still work in the deck if you just want to be doing that. You want to be drawing two cards and then donating to an opponent. That's perfectly fine, but the token will stick around every time you create one. So again, might want to look at taking that card out of the deck because it might not be working like you expect it to. However, I had another question similar to this about Humble Defector with Rionia, Fire Dancer, and this actually does work, again, because the wording is different, right? So Rionia says at the beginning of combat, on your turn, create X tokens that are copies of another target creature you control, where X is 1 plus the number of instant and sorcery spells you've cast this turn. They gain haste, exile them at the beginning of the next end step. So you will create the token copy of your Humble Defector, or many copies possibly. You'll tap them to draw cards, and of course then as the ability resolves, you'll have to donate them to an opponent. But here the wording is exile them at the beginning of the next end step, and of course that ability is attached to the creature that you have created, and exiling doesn't care about who controls it, right? This is not like sacrifice, so those tokens actually will be exiled on the end step regardless of who controls them. So this interaction actually does work. Humble Defector is a great fit in your Rionia deck. Moving on to another patron suggestion that I got, and that is with Mirko Vosk with Mill Doublers. Mirko Voss says, whenever Mirko Vosk Mind a Drinker deals combat damage to a player, that player reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal 4 land cards, then puts those cards into their graveyard. What doesn't work here is the mill doublers, okay? And as we probably all know, the term mill was sort of a magic lingo thing for the longest time and has actually become a mechanic. So if you look at a card like Bruvak, the Grandiloquent, if an opponent would mill 1 or more cards, they mill twice that many cards instead. This is in 41% of Mirko Voss decks. Now, you probably will be milling in this deck, right? That's probably what you're doing in the deck. So Bruvak likely works with a whole lot of other cards that you are using in this deck, right? But it does not work with your commander. Your commander is not milling. When they added the mill mechanic to the game, they updated all these cards. So if your commander or any card is milling, it should actually say mill. That player reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal 4 land cards and puts them into their graveyard is not specifically milling. It will not work with Bruvac. Milling does not include effects that instruct players to look at the top card of their library or reveal the top card of their library and then possibly put it into their graveyard. It's not the same thing, even though it might seem like it is. There are probably a lot of other cards as well that will not work with this interaction. Zelix Sanity Flayer, which is in 39% of all Mirko Voss decks, again, works with probably a lot of the other mill effects you're using, but will not work with your commander because it says whenever a player mills 1 or more creature cards, you create a 1/1 black horror creature token. So you will not get that trigger off your commander ever because your commander isn't actually milling. However, a card like Undead Alchemist will work here, right? It says whenever a creature card is put into an opponent's graveyard from their library, exile that card and create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. That works. It's not using the exact term mill. It's just saying any creature card going into an opponent's graveyard from their library, and your commander's ability is putting cards from their library directly into the graveyard. So that effect will work. You just have to be careful, just in general, if you're doing a milling theme, any card that is referring to mill actually has to say mill on it if that's specifically what you're looking for, right? So I guess if you have a Bruvac deck as well, you might run into this situation because with Bruvac, you actually want to be milling. And if you're not doing so, some cards might not actually work in your Bruvac deck as well. So you got to be careful with the actual wording of cards here. All right, had another comment about Blighted Agent in Brokos decks, right? And Brokos Apex Forever is a mutate commander, a big trampling creature, and you may cast Brokos Apex Forever from your graveyard using its mutate ability. So of course you want to be mutating onto creatures essentially that you want to be making bigger. That's always a great way to use this commander. I think Cold-Eyed Selkie is an absolute slam dunk in this deck. A lot of people are playing it. 54% it looks like. I think that number should be more like 100 because it's probably the best fit in that deck. But of course Blighted Agent is not a great fit. It's currently in 31% of Brokos decks. That's quite a bit, and it doesn't work at all. This is one of those situations where this is just not a good card in this deck at all. I can't imagine what else you could be doing here unless you have other buff effects maybe. But the big reason here is because mutate doesn't work on human creatures. I made this mistake myself when I did my Vadrok deck. I had Swiftblade Vindicator in there because I thought, oh, well, there's a great creature to mutate onto because it's got all those abilities. But Swiftblade Vindicator is a human. You can't mutate onto human creatures, right? The ability says if you cast this spell for its mutate cost, put it over or under target non-human creature you own. They mutate into the creature on top plus all the abilities from under it. So what you want to be doing here, I imagine, is having your commander on top being a 6/6 and then having the abilities of the Blighted Agent as well, which of course is making it unblockable and is also giving an infect. So you can very easily get in for a lot of infect damage here. This does not work at all. Blighted Agent is a human rogue, even though the picture might not seem so. Doesn't really look like a human at all, but this is a human. You cannot mutate onto your Brokos with your commander. So this is just not going to work in your Brokos deck at all. And again, is in quite a bit of those Brokos decks and probably shouldn't be in any of them. And if you got any other humans in your mutate decks, right? There's a few mutate commanders out there. No humans should be in your deck at all, really, unless there's a specific reason to do so. Even a card like an Eternal Witness that is a great card in a commander game, I might forego putting it in my Brokos deck just because I'll never have the opportunity to mutate on top of it, right? So probably want to avoid all humans in your mutate deck for that reason. And I will end off today with another interaction that I talked about in a previous video, and that is with Magar of the Magic Strings, the Unfinity commander, and unsurprisingly, it is far and away the most popular commander from Infinity. It is a really interesting commander with a great ability, and it can be a really confusing ability because it's something that we really have never seen before in the game. same, right? You note the name of target instant or sorcery card in your graveyard and put it onto the battlefield face down. It's a 3/3 creature with, whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, you may create a copy of the card with the noted name. You may cast the copy without paying its mana cost, and if this creature would leave the battlefield, exile it instead of putting it anywhere else. And I had been previously asked about Saw in Half with Magar of the Magic Strings, which I covered in this series. And again, that card doesn't work at all. It is in quite a few Magar of the Magic Strings decks and shouldn't be, because Saw in Half is specifically looking for that creature to die in order to create those token copies, and your commander's ability is exiling it instead, so you're never going to get any effect there off of those creatures that you are creating. But more so, it doesn't work for the copy ability as well. And I had another question about this. Okay, well, what if you're just creating token copies of it in another way? Say with a Kiki Jiki, for example, right? Kiki Jiki isn't destroying the creature, it's just creating a token copy. What's going to happen there? That also doesn't work with Magar's ability. So this is going to cover all sort of copying, cloning effects in general, right? When you use your commander's ability, noting the name of target instant or sorcery card is attached to the ability that you are using. So when you take that instant and sorcery out of your graveyard, you are noting the name of it as you're creating the 3/3 creature. That ability is specifically attaching the card that was noted to that creature. When you create a token copy of it, there is nothing that is noted to it. Furthermore, it's also not that face down card. I should also note that whenever you create a token copy of a face down creature, the bottom face, whatever that face is not there. Your token that you are creating is going to just be a 3/3 creature with no abilities, with no creature types, with nothing attached to it at all. It's just a vanilla 3/3 creature, and there is no face down option here. Face down is not a copyable effect. You can copy a face down creature, but all you're going to get is the face up version of it. So that part's not working there at all. And also, what card has been noted is attached to that original creature. When you create the new token copy, your Kiki Jiki is not creating a token copy and then noting the name. The noting the name part came originally from your Magar of the Magic Strings, so there will be no card noted for that created token copy, so it doesn't have anything attached to it at all. So when you get in for damage with it, I mean, you can still do this in the deck if you just want to create 3/3 creatures that you can swing at your opponents, but nothing is going to happen because there is no card that is noted with that created token copy. So if you're trying to do that in your Magar of the Magic Strings deck, it will not work as well. But that is it. That is all. Just some more interactions that may not be working with certain commanders. If you have any other suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comments below and I will cover it in the next video. But that is it for today, and thanks for tuning in.